Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com. And what I want to talk about today is a Masonite. Now, Masonite is a web framework in Python. Okay, in the same way that Django is a web framework in Python, Flask, Fast API, there's several. Now, the value proposition with Masonite is that, like, if you ever use Ruby on Rails in the Ruby programming language, it's a very, very pleasant developer experience. And Laravel kind of mirrors that in PHP, and it's just very pleasant to work with. Um, Django kind of is a batteries included framework, but the way it works is quite different than the way Rails and Laravel work. And a lot of people really like the Python language, but they also really like the way Rails works, and there really wasn't like a nice, something that kind of reconciled that. And that's what kind of Masonite does. It gives you sort of a very Rails like, Laravel like workflow for creating your web application. If you really like sort of that convention over configuration style, which has certainly grown on me over the more I've worked with Rails, the more I kind of starting to like it. Um, but this gives it to you in Python. Okay, so you can have, if you're more comfortable in Python, you just like Python more, this a lot gives you all that sort of flexibility in this package, which is really cool. So let's do the thing. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new folder for a project. So we'll just call this project 1. I'm going to open up my terminal in there. I'm going to create a virtual environment, so I can do that by using the built-in generator in Python. So python-m, then I do venv because that's the module that generates a virtual environment, and I'm just going to call it Mason env, the Mason environment. So that's going to generate a folder for that environment. So you see here, there's that folder, Mason env. Okay, and I'm going to turn that on. So I'm going to just do source dot slash Mason env slash bin slash activate. Okay, cool. Cool. Mason env. Nice. Okay, and so that's how you know that you're in the virtual environment, because you should see the name of the virtual environment over here to the side. Wonderful, 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 wonderful. Now what I'm going to do is install Masonite. So I'll do pip install Masonite, and that'll do all the installing of Masonite and all of its supporting libraries. Cool, that's done. And now I can test that that is installed by just typing in craft. Cool. And then you'll get like all the commands that craft has, like this little like help thing that just means that it's working. Because if it wasn't, it would say like, we don't know what this craft command is. Cool. So now if we want to generate a new project, what you do is you do craft new, and what this is going to do is create a project in the folder that you're in, which is project 1. So craft new. It's making the project, and that is done. And see, like now I have this project in here. Very nice. Oh, I just realized I put this inside the VS Code folder. So let me move that out here. Move. There we go. Okay, cool. So there is, and if you ever use Ruby on Rails, like this is very similar, where it has like an app folder and stuff's in the app folder. But it's also kind of like Laravel, where in Laravel's app folder there's an HTTP folder, and that's where your controllers and middleware go. But that's all there. So we're gonna keep it fairly simple. We're gonna just make a couple routes, just so you can kind of see how this kind of works, a lot like Rails. So if I want to generate a new controller, I can just say I think it's craft. If I can spell craft controller my controller. Just say my first. So that's my first controller. Okay, because it's automatically going to add controller at the end. So craft controller my first. Why did I not like that? Oh, it's because I need to reopen my terminals because I moved the folder. So let me just close these. Oh, doesn't want to let me trash that one. I'll just do that. Okay, project 1, open integrated terminal. Okay, cool. So craft controller my first. Okay, craft command. Oh, because the virtual environment's not on. So let me do that again. There we go. Now, because see what happens if the virtual environment's not on, it doesn't see that we installed Masonite. So now let me go back and run that command. Craft controller my first. Okay. In my case, it should. We're going to see craft. Pip list. Did Masonite install correctly? Yeah, it's apparently not installed in this particular environment. So I must have lost it when I moved the folder around. So I have to install again. Pip install Masonite. Oh, Python virtual environments. Okay, well, I'll deal with that later. Okay, so now when I do that, I shall now do the other command, craft. I should be able to do the craft controller my first. Module named. Oh, I think it's, if I made a mistake, it's probably like new controller. Let's go get the docs. Always look at the docs. Masonite, Python. Nope, that's not what I'm looking for. Python. There we go. And the documentation is actually written pretty well and easy to read. So I go here to controllers, and the command is craft controller dashboard. So I think I wrote controllers by accident, didn't I? Craft controller. My first. No, that was right. I didn't have to do the Python before. Module not found. No module named Masonite.logging. Am I in the right folder? I am. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to generate the project again. Okay, so you just get to watch me walk through the process again. Not bad for repetition. Because I think when I move the folders, it just kind of screwed everything up. So make sure I make the folder in the right place. Project 1. I open it up in terminal. I'm going to create the virtual environment. Python-m venv mason env. Then we turn on the environment. /venv. Mason env /bin/activate. It's always the same thing. Because basically when you generate the virtual environment, there's always a binary folder in it, and then you run the activate script. So that turns that on. Pip install Masonite. Install the library. Sorry for the rough throat. Then we do a craft new. That should generate the project. There we go. That's all working right. Good. So looking like we're in good shape. And then craft controller my first. And now the controller. Okay, good. So just have to kind of reset it. For some reason I got all confused when I moved the folder around. Okay, so with that, if I go to app and I go to HTTP, there's my controllers and there's my first controller. And you see a file that looks like this. Okay, and essentially the way it works is that this is your constructor, the init method. And essentially all it's doing right now is that it's passing the request to the object. So that way you can always just be like self.request to get things like the request body, params, things like that. Okay, and then this method, you can make as many methods as you want, then you can call them whatever you want. But the idea is these methods are things we can point our routes to. So we don't need the view. The view parameter is used if we're going to like generate HTML views. I'm going to do a Json API. So essentially for a Json API, you just return a dictionary. So I can just say hello world. Okay, so I'm just returning a Python dictionary. Masonite will know that since that's a dictionary, it should be returned as JSON, and it'll send JSON. But the thing is, I need something that points to this method. Those are my routes. So basic controllers have all the functions for your responses. The routes will detail like when do you make a response to them. So kind of like, so this is a lot like Rails. Rails, you have these controller classes that have all these methods inside them. And then what we do is you go to routes and web, And then here we can say, hey, when do you run which method? So in the case, this default one says, hey, whenever someone makes a get request to slash, run the show method on the welcome controller. Okay, so for ours, we're going to do get, so anyone makes a get request to first, we're going to say on my first controller, because that's the controller we just made, it has got to be the same name. So if I take a look at it, see it's my first controller. And then the at, after the at, is the method name. So in this case, we still kept it show, but if I called it something else, I'd put that name down. Okay, and then here you just put like a name for the route. Okay, and you can, if you were doing like HTML views, you could like link via the name. Like it doesn't really matter so much for an API. So, but it's there, so I'll write it, and that's it. Like now I should be able to use that route. So I can do craft serve, and then I should be able to go to localhost 8000. Like there's the default route, which just loads up that particular view. But then I want to go to R, which is first, /first, and see, there's our hello world, there's our JSON. So it's pretty straightforward. And then just kind of like it would be in Rails, you can just do migrations, create models, and they just become available to your controllers. Okay, so you would have commands like craft model, craft migrations, and you can generate your migrations. All that's detailed in the documentation. So if I go back to the documentation, I'd go over here to see all the craft commands in the introduction, and here like lists all the different commands. So like commands for migrations, so I just craft a migration to make tables, edit tables, then I can craft my models, and then again, this just shows you the commands. Like if you want to get more detail into how the models and migrations works, you need to take a look at the ORM, which has a separate set of documentation. So if you go over here, the Masonite ORM docs, and then here it kind of gives you more details on like filling out the files that get created, like the models and all that stuff. You know, so that's pretty cool. But yeah, pretty straightforward. And again, if you've done Rails, if you've done Laravel, this should feel pretty at home. If you haven't, you'll probably really like it. And if you have Laravel and Rails experience, you probably really like those. So this is going to be a way you can do the same thing in Python. Overall, pretty cool framework. Has a lot of other really cool stuff built into it, but I'm not going to get to all that. But you can kind of see the docs. It's very much batteries included with kind of everything you kind of need to build the thing that you're building. But otherwise, I will see you all later. You guys have a great day and enjoy. Again, make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Check out the Slack and Discord community over there at devnursery.com, and have a great day.